Now imagine this. You're on live TV in front of millions and the President of the United States looks at you and says you don't belong here. That's exactly what happened to Jasmine Crockett. But instead of backing down, she gave an answer so powerful, it turned the entire audience against Trump. The broadcast began just like any other. Bright lights, the hum of cameras, the audience whispering in low voices, waiting for the fireworks they knew might come. On one side stood Donald Trump, firm at the podium, with his usual confident stance. On the other stood Representative Jasmine Crockett, poised and steady, prepared to speak her truth. For a few minutes, things seemed ordinary. Questions about the economy, questions about leadership, a back-and-forth exchange that was sharp but nothing out of the ordinary. Viewers at home might have thought this would be just another long night of talking points. But then, everything shifted. Trump leaned forward, his face tightening, his voice rising with a sharper edge. He pointed in Jasmine's direction and cut across her words. "You don't know what it's like to deal with real American problems," he said. His tone wasn't just dismissive, it was personal. Then he added the words that sent a shock through the entire stage. "You don't even come from here." The room froze. The audience stared in disbelief. The moderators looked down at their notes, unsure of what to do. This wasn't just a disagreement about policy. This wasn't just a tough question. This was an attack, direct, heavy, and aimed straight at Jasmine Crockett's identity. For a moment, there was silence. Not a comfortable pause, but a silence that pressed down on the entire room, the kind of silence that makes people hold their breath. Jasmine sat there, her expression calm, though her eyes revealed she had heard every word. She didn't rush to answer. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she simply lifted her chin, leaned closer to the mic, and asked in a firm, even tone, "Do you have any proof of that?" The crowd leaned in. It was the kind of question that demands an answer, but Trump didn't have one. Instead of presenting facts, instead of defending his claim, he shook his head and doubled down. His words cut again, sharper this time. "You're lying. Everybody knows which country you really belong to." Gasps filled the audience. People shifted in their seats, some in disbelief, others in shock that the president had taken the attack this far. It wasn't about policy anymore. It wasn't about debate. It was personal, cruel, designed to silence. Trump's words hung in the air like a weight. Some audience members glanced at Jasmine, waiting for her to respond. Others turned to Trump, wondering if he had gone too far. The tension was unbearable. And in that moment, Jasmine Crockett had a choice. She could let the insult slide, stay quiet, or try to move on, or she could rise to the challenge. Her hands gripped the podium, her voice steady, her eyes locked on Trump. She was ready to answer. What no one in that room expected, what Trump himself could not have seen coming, was that Jasmine's reply would not only defend her, it would expose him. The stage was set. The silence deepened. The audience braced themselves, and just when it seemed like Trump had won the moment, Jasmine Crockett prepared to deliver the words that would flip the entire exchange upside down. The air in the studio felt heavier now. You could almost hear hearts pounding as the audience leaned forward, waiting for Jasmine Crockett's reply. Some expected her to shrink back. Some thought she would try to laugh it off. Others believed she might even stay quiet. But Jasmine did none of those things. She straightened her shoulders, her face calm, but her voice clear, carrying across every corner of the room. And with one simple sentence, she turned the spotlight back on Trump. "Who are you to question whether I'm American?" The words cut through the silence like a blade. The audience stirred, whispers rushing from row to row. It wasn't loud or angry. It was powerful because of how steady it was. Jasmine leaned closer to the microphone. Her eyes never left Trump's face. She didn't blink. She didn't back away. "I love America from my heart," she continued, her tone rising, each word like a strike of a hammer. "And when the day comes, I will die in this land in an American graveyard. This is my home. Always has been, always will be." Gasps filled the studio. People sat upright, their eyes glued to her. This wasn't just a rebuttal. It was raw, emotional, and impossible to ignore. But Jasmine wasn't finished. Not even close. She let the pause hang, letting those words sink in before she delivered the next blow. Her voice sharpened and her tone carried a new edge of fire. "You question my loyalty to this country," she said, "but let's talk about loyalty. Let's talk about where you come from. Trump's jaw tightened. His lips pressed together. For the first time that night, he wasn't the one steering the conversation. Jasmine continued, her voice steady, her pace slow, every sentence striking with purpose. Your grandfather, Frederick Trump, wasn't banned from Germany for nothing. He wasn't some misunderstood figure. He was forced out because he refused to serve his country. He ran away from duty. And when the Bavarian government caught up with him, they stripped him of citizenship and told him to leave. That's the bloodline you carry. The crowd shifted again, murmurs spreading like a wave. People who had been silent were now leaning in closer, trying to catch every word. And let's be clear, Jasmine pressed on. When Frederick Trump tried to crawl back, tried to regain that citizenship, the German government said no. Why? Because he had abandoned them to avoid military service. That's the truth. Trump's face hardened. His hands gripped the podium tighter, but he said nothing. Jasmine raised her voice just enough to echo with conviction. So when you stand there and question whether I belong in America, remember this. Your own grandfather was cast out of his homeland because he was unfaithful, because he lacked loyalty. And you carry that same blood. The audience gasped again. The moderators exchanged uneasy glances. The tension had flipped. What had started as Trump's attack was now a spotlight burning directly on him. Jasmine's final words in that moment hit like thunder. You don't get to question my love for this country when your family's history shows betrayal. Not me, not today, not ever. The room erupted. Some clapped, some sat in stunned silence. But no one could look away. Trump had thrown the first punch. But Jasmine Crockett had just turned the stage into a battlefield, and the first strike landed squarely on him. The silence after Jasmine's words was almost unbearable. The audience's eyes flicked back to Trump, waiting. Would he answer? Would he fight back? Or would he admit defeat right there on live TV? But Trump wasn't the kind of man to sit quietly. His face turned red, his jaw tight, and he leaned into the microphone with the force of someone trying to take control again. That's not true, he snapped, waving his hand as though he could brush away her words like dust. Everyone knows my family has been great, loyal, proud. We built this country stronger than anyone else. Don't twist history. The words came fast, almost rushed, like he was trying to drown out the echo of Jasmine's accusation. But the audience wasn't convinced. Murmurs filled the air again. They had heard Jasmine's calm, steady facts, and now they were listening to Trump's denial. The contrast was striking. Jasmine didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, watching him carefully as though she knew this was exactly how he would react. Are you saying the Bavarian government records are fake? She asked softly, but with enough force to make the question sting. Trump's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For a split second, the powerful man on stage looked caught off guard. Then he tried again. That was over 100 years ago, he barked, his voice rising. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything today. Nobody cares about that. The audience reacted immediately. Some gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others shook their heads. He had just admitted the truth by trying to bury it under time. Jasmine seized the moment. You care about questioning my background, she shot back, her voice sharp. But suddenly history doesn't matter when it's about your own family? That's convenient, the crowd erupted. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a chess game in front of millions, and Jasmine had just cornered him with his own move. Trump's face darkened. His usual confidence seemed to waver, even if only for a second. He leaned forward again, this time raising his voice louder than before. You don't know what you're talking about. My family came here, we worked hard, we built businesses, we made America strong. That's the truth. Nobody cares what some old German government said. It's fake, all fake. But his words sounded different now. They didn't carry the same weight. They sounded defensive, shaky, almost desperate. The moderators shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The tension was unbearable. Would anyone step in? Should they? Or should they let the fire burn out on its own? Jasmine didn't rush. She let Trump's outburst hang in the air like smoke. Then calmly she spoke again. Your grandfather ran from duty. That's not fake. He abandoned the country he was born in because he didn't want to serve. That's not fake. And when he begged to return, he was rejected. That's not fake either. Those are official records. Trump clenched his fists on the podium. He wanted to cut her off, but her voice carried over his, sharp and clear, commanding the room. And here's the part you can't run from. Jasmine added, her words slow, deliberate, and piercing. That blood runs in you. If your family line turned its back once, what makes anyone believe you carry the kind of loyalty you question in others? The studio fell into another stunned silence. Trump opened his mouth again, but this time his words stumbled. That's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. Everyone knows I love this country more than anyone. More than anyone. But the power was slipping away from him. The more he denied, the more the cracks showed. And Jasmine Crockett, calm as ever, stood firm, letting every second of his unraveling speak louder than her own voice. The stage had flipped. The audience wasn't waiting for Trump's answers anymore. They were waiting to see what Jasmine would do next, and she wasn't finished. Trump's words still echoed in the air, loud, defensive, almost desperate. I love this country more than anyone, he shouted, gripping the podium as though holding on to control itself. But the audience wasn't buying it. The tension in the room was thick, and all eyes turned back to Jasmine. She had already cornered him with history, but now she was ready to finish what she started. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice calm again, steady but with a sharpness that carried weight. You say you love this country more than anyone, but love isn't measured by words shouted into a microphone. Love is proven by action, and when I look at your record, I don't see love. I see neglect. The audience stirred. Her tone wasn't angry, it was colder, more precise, like a surgeon making the final cut. You question whether I belong here, she continued. Yet I've spent every day working for the people in my community. People who struggle to pay rent, parents who can't afford medicine, children who go to bed hungry. That's real America. Gasps and nods rippled through the crowd. Jasmine wasn't just defending herself anymore, she was speaking for millions. And what about you? She asked, her eyes locked on Trump. While Americans struggle, you throw lavish parties, you surround yourself with luxury, you chase power. How can a man who ignores the pain of his own people call himself a patriot? Trump shifted uncomfortably, but Jasmine didn't give him space to interrupt. Patriotism isn't about making speeches. It isn't about waving flags for a camera. It's about sacrifice, about standing with people when they need you most. Your grandfather abandoned his country to avoid service. He begged to return, and they shut the door on him. That's the bloodline you come from. And today you do the same thing, abandon the very people you're supposed to lead. The studio fell silent again, heavier this time. Some in the audience had their mouths open, others sat frozen. The weight of her words was undeniable. Trump tried to cut in, that's not true. But Jasmine's voice thundered over his. You want to call me un-American? Look in the mirror. What loyalty have you shown to the working man? To the single mother? To the veteran on the street corner begging for food? You talk about greatness while people suffer, while poverty rises, while the most vulnerable are forgotten. Tell me, Mr. Trump, what's patriotic about turning your back on them? The moderators froze, unsure whether to intervene. But they didn't. They couldn't. The moment was too electric, too raw. Jasmine's words poured out like fire now, each sentence sharper than the last. You are the grandson of a man stripped of his citizenship for cowardice. And you stand here pointing fingers at me? You question my love for America? I fought for this country every single day, and I'll keep fighting. But you carry the blood of betrayal, and every action you take proves it hasn't changed. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. A wave of murmurs rolled through the room, and a few even clapped before catching themselves. Trump's face flushed deeper. His fists clenched tighter. But he couldn't speak fast enough to stop the impact. The words had already landed. Jasmine leaned back slightly, her tone softening but her eyes sharper than ever. So let me ask again, she said slowly, deliberately. Who are you to question my loyalty? Who are you to measure my love for America? When your own bloodline tells a story of betrayal. The silence that followed was deafening. The cameras caught every flicker of Trump's expression, anger, frustration, maybe even a flash of fear. He had walked into the moment confident, certain he could crush her with a few insults. But now he stood on shaky ground, facing the weight of history itself. The crowd knew it. The moderators knew it, and Trump knew it too. Jasmine Crockett had landed the knockout blow. The studio was silent. Not the ordinary kind of silence, but the kind that hangs in the air long after an explosion. Everyone in that room had just witnessed something unforgettable. Trump stood stiff at his podium, his face red, his lips pressed tight, searching for words that simply wouldn't come. He had started the exchange with confidence, even arrogance, but now his power seemed to drain away under the weight of Jasmine's words. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett stood tall and unshaken. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She just held her ground, her presence calm but commanding. And in that quiet it became clear. She didn't need to shout. She had already won. The audience whispered among themselves, some covering their mouths, others shaking their heads in disbelief. They had come expecting a fiery exchange. What they got instead was something bigger, a rare moment when truth cut deeper than any insult. Trump tried again, his voice cracking with forced strength. "She's wrong. Totally wrong. Don't listen to her." He jabbed a finger toward Jasmine. "She's making things up, lies, all lies," but his words didn't land. They floated in the air and fell flat, weak echoes compared to the thunder that had just rolled across the stage. Jasmine, steady as ever, responded with calm finality. "You can call me a liar all you want, but history doesn't lie, records don't lie, and the people of this country, those struggling to survive each day, they know who truly stands with them. I don't need to prove my love for America. My work, my service, and my sacrifice prove it every single day." The audience broke into scattered applause. It wasn't wild or chaotic, it was steady, building, a sound of agreement that grew louder and louder until it filled the entire studio. Trump's expression darkened. He looked down at his notes, shuffled them, tried to regain focus. But the moment was gone. He had thrown the first strike, and Jasmine Crockett had turned it into his undoing. One of the moderators finally stepped in, his voice careful, almost hesitant. "Thank you both. Let's move on to the next question." But nobody in that room was ready to move on. The exchange hung over everything that followed, casting a shadow on every other topic. As the cameras zoomed out, one image remained clear: Jasmine Crockett standing firm, unwavering, having not only defended herself, but also exposed something deeper about her opponent. For those watching at home, it was more than just a debate moment. It was a story of power meeting truth and truth refusing to back down. And for Trump, the damage was done. His attack had backfired. His words, meant to weaken Jasmine, had instead opened the door for her to deliver the hardest blow of the night. The story would linger in every conversation afterward, replayed in the minds of those who had witnessed it live. Not because of volume or theatrics, but because of how Jasmine had held her ground, with facts, with passion, with an unshakable love for the country she called home. She had ended the night not just defending herself, but standing as a voice for millions who rarely got to be heard. And Trump? He had started the fight, but he had no idea that on this night, he would be the one left silent.